Time for one last Old West showdown. Phoenix. Under this high, bright desert sky, 4 drivers will enter, and you know the rest.
Three flags in the air.
No one is going to give you this championship. You've got to take it.
He's a Cup Series champion.
The NASCAR Championship on NBC and Peacock.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. I'm Roger Hoover. It's great to be with you in Tuscaloosa at our studios for this week's first show as we get ready for the LSU game coming up on Saturday for Alabama football. We'll also be talking about a little Alabama basketball as well, as it's finally November 1st, 2022. And here's a look at what's coming up on the show today as we'll go through our headlines. Thanks to our friends at RJ Young. They're the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. They've given us a smart board to go through everything that's coming up on the show today. First things first, we'll always hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, as he met with the media on Monday for his weekly press conference, getting the table set for what's coming up against LSU. Then we'll have a one-on-one conversation with Crimson Tide linebacker Henry To'o, as he's the leader of this Crimson Tide defense. He'll talk about what the leadership group has been working on in the wake of the Tennessee loss and the win against Mississippi State. Then we'll talk with Bryan, who of course was a legendary basketball player here at the Capstone and for 20 years has been our color analyst on the radio, and Bryan will be along to share his impressions from the Southern Illinois charity exhibition this past Saturday, plus preview what's coming up next Monday when Alabama hosts Longwood to begin the season and what'll be a women's and men's basketball doubleheader at Coleman Coliseum. Then we'll take a look back to last night's edition of Crimson Tide Rewind with Be Kind Crimson Tide Rewind, hearing the best moments from last night as Corey Reamer and I hosted that show from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills, and that runs each Monday at 6 p.m. all throughout football season. Speaking of football, let's take a look at our football headlines for the Crimson Tide as Alabama this week. After the open date, getting ready for the LSU Tigers at 6 p.m. start. LSU's ranked 15th in the country. Alabama ranked 6th, so it's a great matchup coming up in Baton Rouge, a place where Alabama has played really well. There was a loss for the Crimson Tide in 2010 against LSU, but since then, victories in Tiger Stadium for the Crimson Tide. The last 5 trips have been very successful there. Yesterday, of course, was Monday. That meant it was Halloween. That meant it was Coach Saban's birthday, and as Coach Saban made his way to the team meeting, there were some cupcakes. There was a picture of a young Nick Saban on the board there. Alabama really had a fun time getting to celebrate with Coach Saban his birthday. I encourage all of you to check out Alabama football's social media and see that celebration for yourself. Certainly good to see that, and they got Coach Saban to crack a smile and even say, I don't make them like they used to anymore. So that was a really cool moment yesterday. We also learned that the Ole Miss Rebels, they're off this week, so they're going to go into that matchup with only one loss on the season, and that will be a CBS matchup, 2:30 start time on November 12th in Oxford. Of course, our radio coverage for that game will begin at 11:30 a.m., and just a reminder, against LSU, 6 p.m. kickoff down in Red Stick, and that means we will start at 3 o'clock with our radio coverage on the network. Starting later today, the Alabama soccer team starting its, not necessarily defense, but the regular season champions trying to win a tournament championship as well in SEC soccer. And later tonight at 5 p.m. in Pensacola, they'll be taking on Mississippi State as the tournament will run through Sunday. That'll be the final coming up on Sunday afternoon in Pensacola as Alabama hopes to win an SEC soccer tournament championship, which would be a first in school history. The Crimson Tide ranked number 1, and you can watch all of the matches coming up on the SEC network. And we also got great news as Alabama takes 6 of the 7 SEC yearly awards. So many to go through, starting with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Wes Hart, being named the SEC Coach of the Year. You had Raina Reyes as the Defender of the Year. Felicia Knox as the Midfielder of the Year. Forward of the Year, Riley Parker, then Gianna Paul, the SEC Freshman of the Year, and also all SEC freshman team, second team, first team, all really well represented by Alabama. Not just the soccer team, SEC champions. How about the cross-country squad for both men's and women's cross-country SEC champions? It's the first cross-country sweep in Alabama history for those SEC championships. Congratulations to Dan Waters and all the student athletes on tremendous performances as Alabama off to a really good start in terms of fall sports, winning SEC championships with what soccer and cross-country have already done. Hopefully football later in the fall as well. Men's basketball team, I mentioned we're going to talk with Bryan Passink in a few few minutes. A 73-64 win over Southern Illinois. That was at Foster Auditorium in that charity exhibition game on Saturday. So a good tune-up for the Crimson Tide before the opener coming up next week. And then the baseball team, after playing really well against Auburn on Friday down on the Plains, they will be finishing up their fall practice with the Fall World Series. That's Thursday through Saturday at Sewell Thomas Stadium. Hopefully you can make it out and support Brad Bohannon and the Crimson Tide baseball team as they get ready for the winter and for their season to start. But for Alabama, basically a new season starts with this month of November in football. 4 critical games are coming up for the Crimson Tide following the open date, and it was head coach Nick Saban meeting with the media on Monday to kickstart LSU Week 2022.
We had a good work week last week. Really tried to emphasize with the players, what are you going to attach yourself to for the upcoming challenges for the rest of the season. Great time to do a little, self-assessment of what we need to do to get a little more consistent execution, whether it's individual players, systematically on offense, defense, special teams. So we really need to come together as a team versus good opponent. And that's obviously going to be really important for this game versus LSU, who right now is probably playing as well as anybody in the country. They're very well coached. This game has always got, significant implications. They're always ranked, we're always ranked. So it's kind of a rivalry game that is always a really important matchup. Bryan Kelly has done an outstanding job there, bringing this team along, improving each week. Jaden Daniels is one of the most productive quarterbacks in the country with his ability to run the ball, rush the ball, a very effective, efficient passer. They've got really good running backs. Got a whole core of receivers who have 20 or more catches that all do a good job in terms of getting open, catching the ball, run after catch, very good systematic scheme on offense. Their defense is allowing like 21 points a game, which is, one of the tops in the country. They're aggressive, they got good rushers, they're athletic, they've got good cover guys in the secondary, and they've got good skill guys on special teams. Their specialists are very, very good, so very challenging game all the way around for us, and we're going to have to do a great job of paying attention to detail, preparing for the game so that we can get more consistent execution and play for 60 minutes in the game. Yeah, I think so. I think, fundamentally, we worked really hard to get Eli to understand the expectation for what we want him to do, to have a good understanding of the scheme, of how we're playing and what we're playing. And I think he's developed confidence, throughout the season as he's learned more. And gotten more comfortable, and I think he played well in the last game, so hopefully he can build on that. But I think it's important that he just, goes into this game and bees himself and doesn't think he has to do something fantastic just because he's playing against the team he used to play for. I think that's always important psychologically, the guys to be able to focus on what's in front of them and, do their job.
Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR, and don't miss out on the event of a lifetime. The Daytona 500 kicks off the NASCAR regular season on February 19th, 2023. Be there and experience the energy, excitement, and power as drivers battle it out in the 65th running of the Great American Race. Purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com. And don't forget, the NASCAR Cup Series comes to a close this Sunday in Phoenix. Should be a tremendous finish to the championship in NASCAR for 2022. Back on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, we always have one-on-one conversations with members of the Alabama football team on these shows all throughout football season, and this week we've got 2 great Crimson Tide players coming up. On Thursday, we'll be chatting with Crimson Tide quarterback Bryce Young, but today we speak to one of the key leaders on this defense for Alabama. It is linebacker Henry To'o. He leads Alabama in tackles, and he joins us to talk about what's next for this Crimson Tide team. Henry, how'd you guys use the open date to rest and get ready for these next 4 games coming up?
Yeah, definitely took it to get our bodies right. It was a long stretch that we had. I think it was 8-7 games that we played. So got a couple guys' bodies right, got our fundamentals right, going over goals that we needed to achieve throughout this year, and kind of just went over the last film, the couple games that we had, and try to, execute the things that we didn't execute off this bye week. So, it was good for me. I went home, being able to get my body right, spend time with my family, had a little Halloween get together with my family. So it was good for me.
That's certainly good to hear. And the last time we saw you guys here at Bryan Stadium, played really well against Mississippi State. What led to that being a successful night?
It's about, and Coach harps on this so much. It's about how you practice, about how you prepare, and about how you go throughout the week on how serious you want to take the game. So definitely it was how we practiced. So you've seen the difference between the weeks past and how we played this past weekend. So, it's about carrying on now. It's about doing that over and over and over and how well you can do that over and over again. So super excited about it. This is a huge week for us this week. We're going into another hostile environment, great team. Super excited about the challenge.
Yeah, how important has the leadership been in after the loss to Tennessee? What were some of the things you guys really talked about as a leadership council?
Getting the guys together, it shouldn't take us a loss to be able to realize what we need to fix. We didn't want to be that woulda, coulda, shoulda team, you know what I'm saying? So definitely bringing guys together, emphasizing the importance of practice and about how you prepare and about how serious you take the week. So I think that's been a huge part of our leadership and bringing guys along about how we prepare and how, show them an example about how we watch film, about how we practice. So bringing all the guys along has been the hugest part.
One other note about the Mississippi State game, some thin depth on the defensive line. Were you impressed by how well Alabama was able to get a push in that game?
Yeah, it's about the next man up. Coach harps on that so much about, you're just one play away, about you get on the field and then, how you prepare and how you practice is going to show about how you play on Saturday. So we're super proud of the guys that went in the game. I'm going to need them. We definitely need numbers on that D-line. It takes a lot of guys to be able to push some big 300-pounder guys. So, that's going to be huge for us.
From your perspective, how well has Eli Ricks played recently?
Man, great. Definitely, if you probably ask him, he probably is going to say, I have, X, Y, and Z to fix. So, but in my opinion, he's been good for us. Really, really good for us. Been a huge piece to our defensive back. He's going back to the place where he was this past weekend. So super excited about him. He has a bright future ahead of him, and we're blessed to have him on this team.
You excited to take on LSU in a Saturday night game at Tiger Stadium?
Definitely, 100%. This is a big one. This is a big one. So I'm super excited about it.
We are too. Henry Toto, thank you for joining us. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Just take a minute. Look around you. There's history being made. Has been, will be. And it'll be here sooner than you think.
Good to hear from Henry To'o. Of course, he's going to be leading Alabama coming up this Saturday against LSU in Baton Rouge. Somebody else that had some good performances against LSU in his career and all throughout his time wearing the crimson and white is Bryan Passink. Of course, a basketball player here at the Capstone in the early 90s, and now he's in his 20th season with us as our radio analyst. And he was on the call with Chris Stewart and Tom Stipe this past Saturday for the charity exhibition game. It was the only broadcast you could get of Alabama against Southern Illinois, and we had it for you across our radio network and the Varsity Network app. And Bryan Passink joins us now to give his thoughts on the win for the Crimson Tide, plus look ahead to what's coming up early this season for Alabama men's basketball. For 20 years now, our color analyst on the radio for Alabama men's basketball. And Bryan, Roll Tide, it's great to see you. You got to be back at Foster Auditorium on Saturday, which, no, you didn't play your home games there, but I'm sure it was fun to be there for Alabama's exhibition win against Southern Illinois. How's it going?
It's great, Roger. Great to be with you. It's that time of year again. Basketball season is here. It's upon us, and Saturday was a lot of fun. It was great to be in Foster Auditorium, and thank you for mentioning that I didn't play there. I'm used to getting some old man jokes from you, so I appreciate you at least acknowledging that I did play at Coleman Coliseum. But there's a lot of history at Foster Auditorium, and it was a really cool atmosphere to have students only. You had a few other fans. You had families of players, but it was a unique atmosphere for an exhibition game against a really good Southern Illinois team, and is an opportunity for some of our fans, especially students, to get a look at this year's team. And I think everybody liked what they saw.
Yeah, and it is definitely a new look Crimson Tide team with all the turnover that's happened on the roster. But these guys have played a lot of basketball with themselves over the course of the summer and the European tour. So just from your estimation, like, how good is the chemistry on this team and as we get ready to start this season?
Well, I think everybody around college basketball is in similar positions. I mean, this is not the college basketball of 20, 25 years ago where guys are sticking around 4 and 5 years. Fortunately, Alabama does have some veterans and have some guys that have won a lot of games and won championships just a couple years ago when Alabama cut down the nets to win the SEC regular season. title, as well as the tournament title, but also a lot of new faces. And that is the nature of college basketball this year. The foreign trip for Alabama this summer, going to Spain, going to France, could not have come at a better time, because you have a ton of new faces. You welcome in the number 3 recruiting class in the country, several important transfers, and some guys, they're going to play different roles. So for these guys to have the opportunity to spend a couple of weeks together in Europe and bond on and off the floor is invaluable. And, we know how hard these guys work in the off season. They're playing every day, practicing together, getting shots up in the gym. You've had a little over a month of practice, and now to be able to play a scrimmage about a week ago against TCU, and then this Saturday against Southern Illinois, just kind of builds that chemistry that everybody around college basketball is trying to get. So that's why you play these types of games. And I think Alabama is in a great position. Another week or so, a little less than a week till the Longwood Lancers come to town to officially tip it up. But I think Alabama's in a good place going into the first game of the season.
Speaking of the newcomers, it was Brandon Miller who led the way in scoring with 14 points. He also had 6 rebounds, and we'll go through a few of them here over the next few minutes. But just your early impressions and seeing him for the first time in person in a game-like setting.
Well, he's special, and I've seen him play several times this summer and in the fall in practice, and this time, in an exhibition game. And listen, Brandon did not have one of his better games. He didn't shoot the ball well, but you can tell he's a special talent. He has a chance to be, I think, one of the best players in the Southeastern Conference this season as a freshman. At 6'9", could do so many different things. He can score, he can shoot the 3, can drive, handles contact, can get to the free throw line, and is also, as a young player, wants to be a good defender and is getting better on that end of the floor. He rebounds the ball, just does it all. He's one of the top players. And if you haven't, for those that haven't seen Brandon Miller, get ready. You're going to love it. He's a terrific player, and he's going to be, I think, exciting for our fans to watch this season.
How about Noah Clowney? He won the hard hat for the game against Southern Illinois.
Yeah, and this is one of the most highly touted recruiting classes in the country. Mentioned Brandon Miller, Jaden Bradley, both of those guys, McDonald's All-Americans. And Noah Clowney was not recognized as a McDonald's All-American, but I can tell you it was worthy of it. He's 6'10", can shoot the 3, can rebound, can bang. I think he has a chance to have a better than maybe the experts expected freshman season. He's going to be an impact player for Alabama. Don't know if he's going to start, but he's going to be definitely in the rotation. And I think he's going to have, along with Brandon Miller and a lot of these newcomers, a really good freshman year. It's one of the reasons I'm so optimistic about this team.
And then Namari Burnett, we've seen him around this program for a while, working his way back from injury, transferring over to the capstone. But what did you like about getting to see him, and what we know are still going to be some limited minutes starting the season?
Well, he was coming out of high school, one of the top players in the country, and went to Texas Tech, and thankfully for us, transfers to Alabama. He would have played a huge role on last year's team before he went down with a knee injury, tore his ACL. He's worked extremely hard to get back, and he's back and looks great shooting the ball. He's a two-way player. He really defends. He takes a lot of ownership on both ends of the floor. I think he's going to be a high-level defender on the perimeter for this team, has the ability to shoot the 3 and does a lot of the little things well. You didn't ever hear Nate Oates and his staff complain about not having Namari Burnett last year, but he was exactly what this team needed and missed a year ago. Alabama didn't shoot the ball well. He's a high-level shooter from the three-point line. They were inconsistent on the defensive end, and he's one of the best perimeter defenders on this team, and I think he's going to have a huge impact this season. I know he's excited after sitting out last year. That hurt him to not to be able to participate a year ago, but he's worked extremely hard, and I'm excited about the season he's going to have.
One other individual player I want to touch on before we let you go is Noah Gurley. He was also one of the returners who had some significant minutes against Southern Illinois. Just what do you see for him as he gets ready for this season, what his role could be?
He's better. He's just spent a lot of time in the gym. He was an up and down shooter last year in his first season in Tuscaloosa. At Furman, he was at 40% three-point shooter a couple years ago and had some ups and downs shooting the ball and had some inconsistencies like this Alabama team did, but was so happy that he decided to come back this season. He's a veteran presence. He's shooting the ball much better, can rebound, defend, and I think he's going to play a key role in this year's team.
So Alabama getting ready for Monday night against Longwood, a Longwood team that is picked near the top of their league. And once again, Brian, it seems like this non-conference schedule that we get to go through over the next couple months will really challenge this Alabama team.
It will, and that's what Nate Oates wants to do. Last year was the number one toughest strength of schedule in the country. I don't know if Alabama will have the number one overall. It depends how these teams do throughout the season. But when you look at the teams that are coming into Tuscaloosa, some neutral site games going on the road, we'll be in Portland over Thanksgiving with Michigan State, North Carolina's in that tournament, Oregon, UConn, and then on the schedule, after teams like Longwood that maybe don't get the national press, they're picked to win the Big South and have everybody back from an NCAA tournament team a year ago. You have teams like Memphis coming into Tuscaloosa, Gonzaga, who's a lot of people's pick, along with Houston, to go to the Final Four. It'll be at Houston and Birmingham against Gonzaga. So a very difficult non-conference schedule. And then the SEC, I think, will be the best conference in college basketball this year. Most of the experts say the Big 12 and the SEC are the two top conferences in college basketball. I expect that to be the case this year. So it's going to be a tough schedule, but it's going to be a lot of excitement for this year's team because they have a chance to be really good, and they're going to do it against the best competition in the country.
Look forward to hearing you, Chris Stewart, Tom Stipe, call all the action starting on Monday night, Alabama against Longwood. Brian, just thank you so much for joining us, and we'll have you back soon here on Crimson Drive. Roll Tide.
I look forward to it, Roger. Thanks. Roll Tide.
Fun conversation with Bryan Passink. We'll be hearing a lot of him coming up, not only on the radio this season with Chris, but also on Crimson Drive, giving his thoughts on Alabama basketball. And the season will start next Monday, November 7th. We'll have a full recap of that for you next week on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Monday, November 7th is going to be busy as well here on the network, as we will still have Crimson Tide Rewind coming up from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. We do that each and every Monday all throughout football season. Corey Reamer is the co-host of the show. He and I always have a fun time catching up on Crimson Tide football, and even last night when we met for the Halloween edition of the show, didn't have a game to recap because Alabama was off on Saturday for the open date, but we took a look at where the Crimson Tide have been so far this season through the first 8 games and where this season may be headed. Here is Crimson Tide Rewind, the Be Kind Crimson Tide Rewind edition from last night's show in Vestavia Hills.
Excited to be here, ready for this week. We got kind of a big matchup going on Saturday.
Yeah, rivalry game. It's back again. I mean, top 15 matchup.
Yeah, and a game that at the beginning of the year probably didn't have circled for a lot of people. I know a lot of people were talking about Texas A&M being that marquee game for the SEC West, and here we go. LSU's back at it, first year under head coach Brian Kelly, and they're off and running. And I'm talking about clicking at the very right time. It is a team that has progressed a lot since the beginning of the season, and that's kind of what you expect from a team that's got a new coach, new system, replacing a lot of players. They went out there, were very active in the transfer portal, picked up a lot of guys, lost a few guys, but he's managed to put together a pretty solid squad, and they're playing extremely well in this part of the season. And not many people expected it to be that quick of a turnaround for sure. And I think this off week, I think, was probably a really good time for us to go back to the drawing board and kind of figure out what do we got to figure out, what do we have to work on to where we want to be the team that we need to be to beat some really good opponents coming up for the rest of the season. If we want to have a chance to be in Atlanta, we've got 2 tough road games ahead of us, and then Auburn at the end, which we always know no matter what, it's going to be a tough game. So there's still a lot of positives to take away from this season so far. The defense has played extremely well, and we're seeing some changes from personnel that this last game at least. And then Bryce Young continues to be Bryce Young. He has not had a single drop off. It just seems like he's doing it a lot himself, and I think he would, and we as a coaching staff, as fan base, as a team, would love to see some more support around him from receivers, offensive line, running backs, all of it, just to try to help free him up to where he's not having to win ball games running around and making miraculous plays, because you can't rely on that game in and game out. Even though he's shown the ability to do it, it's still hard to win ball games like that consistently. You don't want to have that as your only weapon from an offensive standpoint to go out there and win some ball games. I think Eli Ricks brought a huge boost to what we saw in that Mississippi State game. He played extremely well. They really tried to attack him because they try to stay away from Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid's had a great year. We saw them try to go after Eli Ricks this past weekend, and I imagine there might be a little bit of a personal vendetta this weekend trying to expose Eli Ricks. But hopefully he grows from the experience that he just had in that Mississippi State game, and he played extremely well. And he's showing us the athlete that he is. And I think it just took some time for him to get comfortable with the system.
He's had to make the adjustment to the Alabama-style defense. Of course, you had to make the adjustment when
Yep.
Coach Saban and his staff came in. What's the toughest part of picking up this new defensive style, especially with what Coach Saban demands from his defensive backs?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. In 2005, we played Florida. They were number 3 or 4 or 5 in the country, something like that. Chris Leak was quarterback. They had a phenomenal team. They come to Tuscaloosa, and we had an absolutely phenomenal defense. You know, Roman Harper, Freddie Roach, D'Amico Ryans, Mark Anderson, all these guys that end up playing in the league for a long time. We ran, Coach Kynes was the defensive coordinator at that time. We ran one defense the entire game. I mean, you didn't have to look over to the sideline to get the call because we stayed in the exact same defense the entire time. And let's just go out there and be athletes, and you know what your responsibility is, and let's go win this ball game. This is not the same style that Coach Saban likes to implement.
So Coach got more man-on-man, just like you kind of knew your job every play?
It's just the way offenses are now is we're trying to play these games because there's so many games in pre-snap checks, pre-snap motions. They're trying to figure out what we're in, whether we're doing a man-to-man look or if we're trying to drop out in a zone. Quarterbacks are giving dummy calls, trying to see where the safeties are rolling, if they're coming in the box, or we got a too-high shell look, or we're playing some sort of man-to-man trail coverage, or whatever it is. Any little indicator that they can get to figure out, okay, I know what they're in, and this is where I'm going to go if they're in this type of coverage. And so as a defense, we're doing the same thing. We're sitting there trying to disguise our coverage, disguise our blitzes, trying to make it as difficult, but you've got to wait until the very last second to move. That's really hard as a defense to hold your water and not try to tip off the offense of what you're doing. If you're the blitzer, you're trying to make it look like you're dropping back in coverage. You know, and it's really hard when they're clapping their hands and raising their knees and motioning, and it looks like the play clock's running down. You're watching the play clock. And every single offense that you watch these days, it just seems like in college football, it used to be just the NFL that did this, but now you see college football, they're doing the same thing. They're taking every single second that they can from the play clock to get down to 0 and trying to take an advantage of figuring out what we're in. So just in terms of what Eli Ricks has to manage is it's not just go out there, you're man-to-man on this guy, go lock him down. Now, sometimes there are those calls that we do that on, but there's also sometimes where you've got a man, but if we get this certain look, we're going to switch. We're going to make all these different adjustments because if they see a straight man-to-man, they're going to be running rub routes, pick plays, doing a lot of things to try to just get us off where they can get some guys that are wide open. And we have a way to manage that is running different coverages to where they can't take advantage of it. So he's got to understand what that is instead of just going out there and playing football like he has since he was in Pee Wee. There's a lot more complication to it, and it took us, and when Coach Saban showed up, a very long time to understand these concepts of this defense. So it's no surprise that it's taken him some time to progress, and we had a spring and summer and everything to implement this, and it was kind of dumbed down, and now he's jumping into a defense that we're running everything that we can possibly call. So it's a big learning curve, and now he's finally got the confidence of his coaches that they can throw him out there, and he's going to go out there and do his job. Well, I think the one thing is we got to make sure we can handle the road game atmosphere because it's been something that's been of a little bit of an Achilles heel for this team over the last couple of years and this season for sure. It's going in there. It's a rowdy environment. We know what this game, the implications of this game are, and we know that this game has some special, everybody's excited about it. It's a homecoming of sorts for Coach Saban. There's a lot of people that are tied into these programs. We recruit very heavily down in that area, go after a lot of the same guys, pulling people out of Baton Rouge. And so I think that's going to be the main thing is not trying to go out there and do too much. Go out there and execute our plan, block out all the noise, and not try to, for Eli Ricks especially, a guy that's from that area or transferred from LSU, go out there and just play our game. and limit penalties. If we could do that on the road this week, that would be a huge step forward for this team.
That's just part of the fun that we have on Crimson Tide Rewind on Monday nights all throughout football season at Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. It goes across the entire radio network, also streaming live in the Varsity Network app and the video stream always here on our social media outlets. It's time to take a look at what's coming up across the Crimson Tide Sports Network the rest of the week, getting you ready for Saturday. It is time for the Wickles Weekend Update, brought to you by Wickles Pickles. They are wickedly delicious. We've had these pickle chips here for a bit, but now we're excited to debut the Wickles Wicked Okra that's also available. I love okra. It was a staple of my diet growing up, and none better than Wickles Okra. You can find out more at wickelspickles.com. Let's take a look at what's coming up across the network. Coming up on Thursday, we'll be back with another edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR, streaming live at 2 p.m. across all of our social media outlets. And then later that night, we will have Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa, as Coach Saban will be by at the restaurant for that. We'll get a preview of that show as well. Coming up with Chris Stewart on our Thursday Crimson Drive. Friday, we'll have the This Week on the Crimson Tide Sports Network podcast, giving you a little bit of the best from all of the interviews that we conduct throughout the week. Then on Saturday, we'll be in Baton Rouge. It'll be Alabama against LSU in a top 15 matchup. Kickoff at 6 p.m., so that means we'll hit the radio at 3 p.m. from Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. Sunday, of course, we'll take a look back at everything across Alabama athletics with Tide TV this week, as well as the Nick Saban Show. And then on Monday, we will have another edition of the show. You just saw some highlights from Crimson Tide Rewind, 6 p.m. from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR, and the 65th anniversary of the Daytona 500 is just around the corner. Don't miss out on the action taking place on February 19th, 2023. Purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSuperspeedway.com. That's going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR as we kickstart LSU Week 2022. And don't forget, we'll be back on Thursday at 2 o'clock for another edition of the show that will include an interview with Crimson Tide quarterback Bryce Young as we get ready for the Tide and the Tigers. Special thanks to the guests that we did have today, including Alabama linebacker Henry To'oTo'o, as long as Bryan Passink and Corey Reamer for their thoughts on Crimson Tide basketball and football. Thanks to our video producer Ethan Carabin for putting the show together. Thanks most of all to all of you for watching this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover from Tuscaloosa saying roll Tide, and thanks for watching.